President Trump and the First Lady are demanding ABC fire Jimmy Kimmel for repeatedly telling vile jokes about the president's death. Kimmel first joked about Melania Trump being a widow before Saturday's shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. He repeated it while defending himself after the shooting, and he put his foot in his mouth again last night.
They were married for 63 years. And excuse me, if you don't mind. That's a record we won't be able to match, darling. I'm sorry. It's just not going to work out that way.
Wait a minute. Did he just make a joke about his death? Only Donald Trump would demand I be fired for making a joke about his old age and then a day later go out and make a joke about his own old age.
Many of the Hollywood left have embraced that kind of dangerous talk. Charlie Sheen, Kathy Griffin, Madonna, Johnny Depp, and others have all joked about President Trump dying. And Carol Markowitz writes this on Fox News Digital: only a handful of the left act like adults after President Trump was targeted again. You know, Emily, at a certain point, it feels like this is a strategy for Kimmel in the wake of the Kirk comments, too. It's like his attempt to get ratings, and he just doubles down, and ABC supports him.
Yeah, I think that this last night was a doubling down of his excuse for it. See, look, I meant it. It was an opportunity for him to underscore that it was, in his opinion, about age. Now, I've mentioned my opinion before, which is that he could still add an apology, that if his explanation, whether or not it's true, it's still distasteful, it's still in poor taste, and the president still suffered his third assassination attempt in front of the First Lady, his wife. So I would appreciate it, also having been at that dinner, that he would just say, I'm so sorry that that happened. And, you know, this joke was just unrelated to all of this. I'm so sorry that that happened to you, to all of you. Why can't he just say that? Because remember, he also twisted the words in the response after to demand instead that the president somehow account for his tone. He is still resisting the notion of having any responsibility or accountability for putting vile rhetoric out there while also having the thinnest skin on the planet, because he demands apologies from anyone else when they put him in the joke crosshairs.
You know, Caroline, and ABC, they didn't stand behind, let's say, Chris Harrison, who hosted The Bachelor, and it's a long time ago, but basically a contestant wore an antebellum dress, and he, in so many words, emphasized that it was a long time ago and forgiveness. I'm paraphrasing his comments, and then he was let go. But it seems like they have a much higher bar for Jimmy Kimmel.
Yeah, no, those guys, he gets the benefit of the doubt. Chris Harrison does not. Look, my fiance does stand-up comedy. I love comedy. We are a big comedy group. We're really into both late night and also all of these comedians that go around, you know, the Cellar, New York City. We're constantly consuming this kind of stuff. And I think it's interesting when you look at the trajectory of Jimmy Kimmel's career. As you recall, he started out doing very irreverent, distasteful comedy way back when, and I think he was desperate for a rebrand from that. And so now what he's doing, I think, is still repenting for the kind of content that he used to do, and he's trying to prove to the Hollywood elders and the elites of media that he has, you know, matured and progressed past that, and he's basically just doing progressive propaganda instead. So that's really what he's doing, is comedy that is masquerading, basically. And none of it is funny. He hasn't been funny for a very long time. That's why the ratings have been tanking for so many years, and the audience is dwindling. So all of this, I think, is just a desperate, you know, grasping at straws for anything to get attention, but it is the dying breath, I believe, of this late night industry.
Yeah, and he feels he has the full backing of ABC, clearly.
Well, I just think he hates President Trump. This is just a full-blown case of Trump derangement syndrome. I mean, we've seen this with the left, where they believe the ends justify the means. When it comes to President Trump, they've intentionally painted him as this existential threat to our country and to society. It's the othering of Donald Trump and his supporters. And you look at the othering of people throughout history, it always comes with violence attached to it. And you look at what the Democrats have done. Maxine Waters encouraging people to get up in the faces of, you were at the part of the administration, you know, get up in the faces of the Trump administration, or Hakeem Jeffries saying that Republicans are extremists, that they must be stopped. Nancy Pelosi repeatedly talking about how President Trump is a danger to society. Joe Biden saying that President Trump should be put in a bullseye. And then they're like, oh, wonder why we've seen all these assassination attempts and why crazy people think that, you know, they're doing the country justice. And then with this Cole Allen, the alleged assassin, you have someone who had a job, a master's degree, went to Caltech. So now you're seeing normal people become radicalized as a result of all this. So I think it just comes down to Jimmy Kimmel hating President Trump.
Yeah, and Paul, I mean, it is shocking when you look at that long list of celebrities that we put up who have all sat there and envisioned Donald Trump's death.
Yeah, and I think it's no accident that they're all losers. They're all on like the real downside of their careers, and so they're making outrageous statements to try to stay relevant. If you look at that lineup, look, I have to be consistent. In the last segment, I'm talking about the First Amendment. Well, I have to be consistent. I think the First Amendment should obtain here. That is to say, I'd rather see the marketplace determine whether or not his late night show survives or not. Relative to radicalization, when I was working counterterrorism all those years, we had to contend with sanctioners and proselytizers who were in caves in Afghanistan or the outback of Yemen trying to radicalize people here to do what they wanted. Now, you have, from where I sit, a mainstream that's doing something very similar here on the left, who are sanctioning, and I'm not saying he went that far calling for Donald Trump's death, but we do know those messages are being received, like the person that was at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. And the last thing I would just say is this: who's getting a pass here is Disney. When I was a kid, Sunday night was like Disney night, Wide World of Disney, whatever it was called, and they had animal shows and things like it. It was comfort food. Disney is way off the track, and man, I'd really wonder what Walt would say now if he could see what his company has become, because it's not pretty.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.